Hello and welcome to Newsfeed, the show where we discuss and debate current affairs. Today I'm joined in studio by Jack, student here at DIT, Clara, fellow student, Kahal, and Ali. And the first topic that we're going to discuss is, this segment is actually called Headlines, and the first things that we're going to do is we're going to go through the headlines that are currently in the news right now and get reactions from our guests here today. So the first headline that we have is Calm Down Stoners, Legal Weed is on a Roll. Can I get a reaction from you guys in 5 words or less? Jack, will you start us off?
Yay.
So you're pro legal weed?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Because, obviously there's lots of pros to legalizing it and making inroads in, revenue between gangs and stuff like that. So, yeah. And, as a country desperately needs money, we could tax it.
Interesting observation. Clara?
5 words or less.
Yes.
Stoners everywhere, all day.
All day. So that's how you feel? You feel that people that use weed are going to be...
I
Pretty
think
much high all the time.
legalizing it is going to make it more of a regularity.
More of a regularity.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty popular already, though. So,
I agree.
You're right there.
Okay.
How do you know,
And-
Jack?
Kahal, let's get you next.
Mixed bag.
Well, I guess that is true. It does lead to a lot of questions about whether or not we should legalize it, because there are, of course, recently discovered medical implications with taking weed. So we do need to take that into account.
But there's implications on both sides. There is negatives and positives on both sides, which any medication has, and the advantages I think outweigh the negatives, in my opinion.
Understand. Okay. And Ali?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same as Cahill, like mixed opinions on it. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. And the next headline that we're going on to is actually about Irish Water and the debt that we're going to be in if we don't pay our fees. And the headline is, Irish Water will take on 130 million euros in debt in uncollected water charges. How do you feel about that? 5 words or less, Jack.
Ooh, 5 words or less. It's such a big topic. I don't know. I don't know. It's like, I feel like obviously there was such massive expenses in setting up Irish Water that what was already a touchy subject has just become so much worse because of it. And I think a lot, it's probably the angriest I've seen people. We're actually a pretty lackadaisical group of people, all things considered, but there's been marches and stuff like that, and I genuinely think people are going to make a stand and not pay the charges.
Do you think people are being oversensitive about it?
I think Britain has water charges, and we do need revenue, but I think it's just the people are already so angry with their government, and I think this is the straw that broke the camel's back, really.
Okay, Clara.
Water shouldn't have a fee.
Water shouldn't have a fee. But if you think about it, China is actually one country that has water charges, and that's a thriving economy.
Yeah.
So what would you say to
Because
that? I don't understand why it would be an issue about charging for water. We already pay for other amenities like electricity. So what is the difference with charging for water?
I don't know.
I think I'll interject here to say
Yes, same
I think
here.
it's because it's such a basic need. Electricity is nice, but for you, to
Electricity
survive, you
is
can survive
nice.
without electricity for days
It's a
or weeks.
necessity.
But without water in 2 days, you're dead. I don't think you should have to pay for it,
Pay to
especially
live.
the extortionate charges that Ireland are planning on charging. They're planning on charging 10 times as much as some other countries are charging currently. London are charging 90 cent per cubic meter, and Ireland are planning on charging over 5 times that.
Over 5 times that. That is understandable that the costs are going to be high, but do you not think that these prices will regulate over time? I feel it's always
I don't
hardest
think so.
in the
I see
beginning.
it like 40% leakage. All 40% of our treated water is leaked into the ground again. I think this is why people are so angry, that they're paying money and nearly half of it is being wasted.
Okay, understandable. Ali?
Yeah, I don't agree with water charges. I think they're kind of stupid because like we are being charged so much more than everyone else, and it is like hygiene and stuff like that. People are gonna like, you know, not be as hygienic because they're like, oh well, I'll save money if I shower like only 3 times a week as to opposed to like 5
Students are
times a
gonna be
week and stuff
filthier.
like that. Yeah, like I think it is like.
Well, that is a negative response to water charges.
They are reforming the how we're going to pay for them over this week. There's going to be a new new allowances made and stuff this week because so many people have been protesting
Complaining,
about how you
yes.
get 21,000 extra litres per child that lives in your house, but none per extra adult that lives in your house, which
Okay.
doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's
It's
all
not
being reviewed.
balanced, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and the third and final headline. And this one is about Taylor Swift and her withdrawing her music from Spotify. And the headline is Taylor Swift takes a stand over Spotify music royalties. 5 words or less, Jack?
Radiohead did it first. I don't know, like, I just like Taylor Swift. Yeah, she's among many musicians who have like taken down their music off Spotify. Hers are for loftier reasons, though. They're kind of like music should be paid for or something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. I think she's like, she can say that because she's minted, but like, for the reality is for musicians like beginning their careers these days, if you're not on something like Spotify, you're screwed. Like, because it's just the way music is consumed now.
I understand it. It's much easier for an established artist to take
Yeah,
her free
yeah,
music off
definitely.
the internet.
Yeah.
Okay. Clara.
Music is an art form.
Okay.
I guess she has a point. I suppose she's saying that like different forms of art, like paintings and I don't know what else you can think of, sculptures. I don't know, kind of arty things, come with a price. You can't get those for free. So why should music be free when it is essentially an art form and there's a large creative process and there is an artist essentially behind, or a team of artists behind a song? So
Yeah.
they should be charged for it.
I agree. Carl.
I just feel it's a bit of gimme, gimme, gimme. It's all about the money for her. She doesn't want her material to be online for free, and she wants to make money out of it.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough for someone who doesn't have the money, but for someone like her, she doesn't need it. She's just being greedy.
I think at the end of the day, the music industry is a business and not a charity. And if you're going to spend months producing an album, you have that right to say, I want you to pay for my work. Because at the end of the day, you wouldn't do a job for free.
That's true, but on the online industry nowadays, there's so much online content available that you don't need to go to Spotify to get it, or you don't need to buy the album to get it. It's online anyway. In the music industry nowadays, the money comes from touring. The music sells the tours, and the tours make the money for the artist.
It's a bit rich, like one of the few artists left on earth who can actually like make money off their albums is complaining about like people not paying for music.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has more to do with her feelings about art and
Well, I think that's a front.
its
like
worth.
It's like Google. Google are nice on the front and
Yeah.
then evil interior. Like,
Well, like, in fairness, she has got enough money to like do her for like 20 million more lifetimes, so she's hardly like money hungry. I think it is kind of more about the art thing with her.
I think it's just.
I
It's
think she just wants to sit in her bank vault counting her billions of dollars and crying to herself about her ex-boyfriend.
Okay. Ali.
Yeah, kind of everything's been kind of touched on, but like I do agree. I think you should have to pay for music, but at the same time, like she is so rich, like I don't see why she bothered to take it down.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems backwards. Like it just is just like the progress is going this way, and Taylor Swift is standing out in the middle of the tide, just going no. Like, because everything's going to be on Spotify in a couple of years' time, or it's all
And
going
to
to
go with
be
your
on-
analogy, she's going to be washed away by the time.
Yeah, please God.
Okay. Well, just as a case study, there's actually an artist out there. Her name is Amanda Palmer, and she's currently a millionaire. She puts all her music online for free. You can get her CDs for free, and she makes her money off getting donations from sites that get funds. I forget the names of them. But what do you think? Yes, yeah. But what do you think of that? Would that be a viable option for a music artist?
I think it is, because like you always have like when a TV show gets cancelled or something, or like I don't know, some like director who's never had any luck getting like a movie produced, like wants to make a movie, and you'll always have vocal fans just being like, no, why can't we have that, or it sucks that we'll never get that. So it's kind of like a way for people to put their money where their mouth is, like.
Okay.
I wouldn't rely on it for a way for a musician to make money, like as a career though, because you're solely depending on donations.
Yes.
Like it's not really your work. Well, I suppose it is your work in a weird, twisted, backward way that is making you the money, but it's not from direct sales of your music.
It's sort of like sophisticated begging.
It's more
Exactly.
patronage.
Yes, that's what
like,
it is.
it's-
As a background, she actually spent 8 years as a street performer. And she
Right.
would collect money, so I guess that's where she got her attitude for getting money that way as opposed to charging for things.
I wouldn't do it.
I think if you have the built-in fan base and like they're eager enough, and especially because a lot of those things, once you pledge, you're guaranteed like a physical copy of something. So it's like when it is made, you are given it like straight away.
I think it's a very niche market, though. I think she's seen a hole in the market and went for it. I don't think it's a valid way for the entire music industry to run.
Okay. And right now we're gonna watch a VT, and we've sent a reporter out on the streets to ask about the issues we're facing today.
It's not playing.
Paul, would you like maybe like move over to the center so Emma can see you if you need to?
Yeah,
find
'cause
it?
I could see it, but Emma couldn't.
Yeah.
And I was trying to. It's like, go back.
Keep speaking.
What's new?
There.
Death slow mo VT.
On what you've heard about Ebola, do you know if it's airborne or not?
Yeah,
I'm not too sure,
Oh,
but
I'm a
a few people are saying it
That's
is,
all right, I'm
and
not
some
gonna be
people
able
are
to
saying
do
it
that
not, so it's hard to believe what's true.
Well, I wouldn't really know a lot about the Ebola because with the coverage of it, I haven't been. It hasn't affected Ireland really as such. So I feel that there's much more important things to read about rather than read about Ebola. So is it airborne? I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
And then when you do hear about it, what is your primary source for Ebola?
It would be probably I'd read a bit off the Guardian. It kind of depends. Sometimes I like the entertainment stuff, and if you read it off the Daily Mail, you get a totally new sort of outlook on it, and that it's gonna wipe out everybody on the earth. But then there was a graphic went up on Facebook as well. I think it was just showing West Africa, and it says 3 countries that have Ebola, and then the rest of Africa doesn't have Ebola. And I kind of wanted to show that it is kind of more in one area as opposed to around the world. But depending what news source you look at, it's a worldwide thing. But if you look at this, it says it's 3 countries in West Africa. So
That was bad.
Gonna be out
Still
of,
rape, not
um,
female.
That was a bad.
Hi,
one.
and welcome back.
well,
Hi, and welcome back to Newsfeed. We're back again with our guests, and the next topic that we're going to discuss is actually the fear-mongering in the media surrounding Ebola. Okay, so Jack, what do you think about the way that news about Ebola has circulated?
I think they've exploited it because like panic sells papers, I guess.
Okay.
Like it's been very blown out of proportion, especially considering like the nature of Ebola as a disease and how it spreads and how
Okay.
it's contained. Like for example, it's not airborne, and it's like direct contact is how you transmit, like direct contact between open wounds and stuff like that. So like, it's very prevalent in certain parts of Africa where like they're so poor they can't afford things like medical gowns and proper gloves and stuff like that. But like over in the developed world, it's far less of an issue.
Yes, I agree. Clara?
Yeah, I think it's kind of been hyped up a lot in the media. Like the first time there was an Ebola outbreak was in 1976 or something, and there's been outbreaks every couple of years since in African countries, but it hasn't been, obviously this is the largest outbreak they've ever had, but I think they are slightly over-exaggerating what's happening. Like if you take a look at the countries that are actually affected by the Ebola virus at the moment, it's just 3. And if you look at that on a map, it's very, very small, where everyone thinks like the whole of Africa is like getting Ebola and they're all dropping dead and all. It's completely over-exaggerated in the media, in my opinion.
I agree, and just sort of as an affirmation to that, I have so many family members and friends in Africa, and I'm not worried about Ebola. It's really not that big of a deal. Carl?
Yeah, I agree. There's only been a couple of cases in Europe, I think 2 cases in Europe, and neither of them resulted in death. But
Yeah.
I think it's the reason the fear-mongering has gone on in the papers and the media is because it could possibly come to the Western world. I think countries, illnesses like malaria that can't come to the Western world aren't talked about, even though they kill much more people.
Yeah.
They kill nearly 1 million people a year or more, and they're not talked about because they're not a concern for us. We're very egocentric and think the world revolves around us.
Yeah. So I guess it's a shift from the war on terror to the war on Ebola. This constant fear of something that's going to happen.
I think humans like need to live in fear. I think that's their natural state. We just need something to be afraid of.
Okay. Ali?
Yeah, I really don't know much about Ebola, and I think that's probably what scares me more. Like, I suppose if you were more educated on it and you'd know how it's transmitted and everything, you probably are likely to be less terrified. But the whole concept of it scares me so much that I don't want to know.
I think it's kind of like once you hear it's like, there's this thing that might come to Europe and it makes you bleed out of your eyes and die. Like, it's just like, it sounds so extreme. You just like instantly go into panic mode. And I
Yeah.
think that kind of like, in that panic, people actually don't stop to realize like, wait, like how much of a possibility is this? Like,
Okay. And understandably, I think it's more scary or sort of threatening if you look at American media. For example, just as a comparison between the way the Americans are reacting to it between British and most Europeans. In American news, it's a constant sort of, it's always on the channel. If you turn on, there's Ebola alerts. Even though it's not really a direct effect, the nurse in Texas is still alive, and she's the only infected patient with Ebola in the US. So what do you think about the way that they're handling that situation?
I don't know. I think it's a bit ridiculous. It's like, yes, there was one man who came into the country with Ebola. Obviously, that's a panic. But then he was quarantined, and then the only person since then to have been infected is one of the nurses who was caring for him, which is an unfortunate and terrible thing, but it's not an epidemic.
But one of those nurses has now been declared Ebola-free. The
Ebola
nurse.
free.
It's
Yeah.
kind
And
of
she got a hug from Obama. for
Yeah.
it.
It's kind of an occupational hazard, like
Yeah.
treating Ebola patients. Like it could happen.
You
Yeah.
may or may not get Ebola. Yeah, I think it's like, it's like you know, with the war on terror thing. It's like Americans love like really like punchy kind of like, you know, shouty kind of headlines saying like you should panic over this and this, especially like Fox News.
Yeah.
Like channels like Fox News breed on panic and kind of hysteria.
Okay. And the next topic that we're going to talk about is actually racism. And we're going to talk about racism in our society today. So what I want to ask you guys is, do you think it's still an issue that's relevant?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's
Okay.
a growing issue. I think We had got to a point where it wasn't so prevalent, but now it is coming back in force. I think it's over 50% of Americans have expressed anti-African American sentiments. That's the word. Thank you, Jack. Sentiments, and that's an increase. There's been an increase over the last 4 years of about 3%, I think, in the sentiments of racial nature.
Okay.
Well, it's in Ireland as well. There was it was in the papers the other day that there's a rise in racism amongst young people, and they said something like 17% of all racist incidents that were reported were made by people under the age of 18, and 8% of those attacks were like the victims were under the age of 18.
Yeah.
And they're just the ones that were being reported.
Yes, exactly. That is, and you have to wonder if we're supposed to be this new society that is breeding tolerance and we're moving away from ignorance. Why is it that young people are more racist? Should this not have changed by now with the older generations taking a different opinion?
Well, I think in Ireland it's like very casual. Like it'd be like I remember I was getting a taxi and this guy was saying we were in the car with him and he's like, oh yeah, and remember, don't ever get in the car with an Arab or whatever, because they'll always overcharge you. And we all laughed, like thinking he was just like making a really like kind of un-PC joke. And then he was just like, no, seriously lads, never get in the taxi with an Arab. Like, and it's like, it's funny, like there's so much, like Irish people, I feel there's so much racism that they don't have the foggiest clue is racism. Like it's always so matter of fact and like just barely said almost.
Like there was a sign put up on a lamppost in was it Leitrim or Louth or something, and I can't remember what county it was, and the sign read attention, landlords leasing property to foreign nationals will not be tolerated.
Really?
Mhm.
Jesus.
Yeah.
What county?
Oh, it was County Tyrone.
Tyrone.
According to my notes,
That
yes.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Carl?
I think it's nearly accepted as part of our nature that we're
Yeah.
racist, and it's a bad way to be that we accept something so horrible about ourselves and don't try and change it.
Yeah.
I think like you're not born a racist. The
No.
way you're brought up is the way you're going to act. So I think we have to look to our parents and the way they've reared the children in this generation to look at why we're becoming more racist again and leaning towards the younger generations leaning towards more racial hatred.
Okay. So right now we're gonna watch a video clip that we have that it's from the internet. We've taken clips of videos, and we're gonna just see what people feel about issues that are in the news today.
Moving on, would you still call racism in this country an issue?
Yeah, I would. It's kind of like, it wouldn't be a violent kind of racism, but I think it's definitely something that's still underlying, like with a lot of people.
And have you ever witnessed it yourself?
Yeah, I probably have.
In what kind of context?
Well, I suppose like one of my friends is black, and he would people would assume that he's not Irish, but he's very much Irish. Things like
A woman does it.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of emphasis is on the males as being the perpetrator because, in general, men are usually stronger than women, but it's still a crime if the woman does it. And just because it's a woman and she might be seen as maybe less, maybe a bit weaker, it shouldn't really be. It shouldn't really be. The effects of it shouldn't be less, if it goes to court or anything. She shouldn't be treated any differently as if it was a man that did it,
And when would harassment go from, or when would it go from flirtation to harassment? What would you call the line?
Well, probably if someone's, showing up at your house in the middle of the night or constantly ringing you when you've expressed that you don't want to be, involved with them anymore, that would be kind of harassment. Anything that you feel uncomfortable with, I think.
And could you define feminism?
Feminism. Well, I think the past few years, like, women have, you know, got a lot more support from different bodies and that kind of thing. So I think feminism is just women showing how strong they are and, you know, who's boss kind of thing, as opposed to living in a world that's ruled by men.
Welcome back to Newsfeed, and in the final segment of our show, we're going to talk about Julia Gilliard's misogyny speech, which is something that went viral around March last year when the former Australian Prime Minister confronted the leader of the opposition, Tony Abbott, on his views on misogyny and sexism. You guys have seen the clip, and it's basically she's the Prime Minister, and she confronts Mr. Abbott because he contests against another member of Parliament for being sexist and being a misogynist, while at the same time not really having any differing views. How do you feel about that contradiction?
I feel like that kind of typifies it for everyone, really. I think there's like a lot of men, if you ask them, like, are you against misogyny? They'd kind of be like, of course I am. But kind of like with racism, it's a more kind of like subtle, kind of like casual thing that it wouldn't necessarily, like, you see on the internet, you see like these dreadful like anti-women websites where it's just like women are inferior, blah blah blah. I think like for a lot of the time the problem isn't like necessarily the crackpots on the internet, but it's more like subtle things, like the way men talk and relate to women, even in like something like dating or something like that. And I actually feel like that's probably one of the worst areas for men, is in regard to dating and how they view women in like building relationships with them. Yeah, like I don't think we'll have many men here being like, oh, women shouldn't get paid more than me because I'm a man. I think it's a little subtler than
More
that.
complex. Ali?
Yeah, I kind of feel like if it doesn't affect you directly, you tend to turn a blind eye to it or whatever. So, kind of, guys mightn't be as like into it or whatever, and then because it mightn't affect them, whereas girls that are affected tend to be more pro-feminist and everything.
Okay. Cathal?
I just thought it was disgraceful that he smirked as she was
As she
berating
was
him.
giving that speech,
Yeah,
yes.
he was smirking. I think Australia is a very chauvinistic country, and I think that's reflected in its parliament and its social etiquette.
Yes.
And the misogynistic behaviour is prevalent in Australia because of this nature that they've developed.
Clara?
Yeah, I agree with Cathal. I think the way he responded to her was ridiculous, especially when he was being criticised. Yeah, I think as well as what Ali was saying, if you're not directly affected by it, you tend not to notice it. It's kind of like ignorance is bliss. You know, you don't want to. Most people anyway, they don't want to stress themselves out about something that isn't affecting them directly, whereas it actually is a really big problem.
He actually, he was in a discussion about issues in Australia, and someone went up to the mic and just said, I want my daughter to have the same opportunities as my son. And Mr. Abbott replied, well, what if men are just physically and mentally more able for leadership and primary positions in the workplace?
There you go. Like, what can you say?
Well, that brings us to the end of our show today. I hope you enjoyed tuning in with us. Thank you very much.